Art as medicine. If I asked you guys what this was a depiction of, your first instinct probably wouldn't be a traumatic experience. And yet for me, this is a trauma that I suffered about 1.5 years ago, which resulted in PTSD. So in the United States, according to PTSD United in 2015, about 70% of adults have suffered a traumatic experience in their lives, and of those, 20% will go on to suffer from PTSD. To give you guys a little perspective on how many people that is, that's 44.7 million in the United States alone. So PTSD is something that we have to think about, and trauma is something that we have to think about in terms of treatment. So I'm going to be talking to you guys about the science behind trauma, what happens to our minds and our memories, and then I'm going to talk about some solutions and my own experience. So according to Dr. Linda Gant, in her article in Arts and Psychology in 2009, there are 3 steps of instinctual trauma response. The first of which is reptilian freeze, the second is mammalian fight or flight, and the third is human cognitive response. And us as humans, we first revert to human cognitive response, and then when that fails, we go to mammalian fight or flight, and then finally the reptilian freeze state. So during a trauma, the reptilian freeze state is the thing that is the most effective in changing our memories. And what actually happens is our verbal mind shuts off, which means that we can't form words to describe what's happening in that moment, which actually causes us to not be able to recall the memory as well, and it'll be out of order. So, according to Dr. Hochberg in his article in Psychology and Research and Development, published in 2011, the goal of trauma therapy is to turn a traumatic memory into just a memory. And so in order to do that, you have to combine the verbal and nonverbal mind so that you can make sense out of what happened and put it into proper order. And what better way to do that than art? Again, according to Dr. Hochberg, art is a really great medium for doing this because it brings memories from the unconscious mind into the conscious mind, and also it creates a physical platform for a patient and a therapist to actually talk about the trauma itself. So now I'm going to be talking to you guys about a specific protocol which I have found is most like my own experience, and that is by Dr. Noah Haas-Cohen in his article in Art Therapy published in 2014. And there are 4 steps that I'm going to go through and kind of describe why they work. So the first step is to build a relationship with your patient. I know that seems kind of intrinsic, but it's especially important for trauma therapy because it's such a kind of touchy subject, and also if the patient is feeling really anxious, it can trigger flashbacks. And I have had this happen, and it's really awkward actually. Scary, but mostly awkward. So the second step is to create a timeline of the trauma using pictures. And this again is because when your verbal mind shuts off, it's hard to remember what happened in order. And so when you create a timeline using pictures, you can physically rearrange what happened into a way that makes sense, and then have that physical manifestation of that so that you can refer back to it later on. The third step is to write about those art pieces and share that writing with the therapist, and this again creates a forum for you to be able to talk about the trauma, and also it allows you to turn the memory from a traumatic one to just a memory, and that goes back to reconsolidation and trying to create a new perspective on what happened. The fourth is to, after discussing those art pieces, to check in and actually change the art piece to fit the new perspective. And I think the best way to explain how that is an actual image of one of Dr. Noah Haas-Cohen's patients' art. The one on the right is the original piece, and the one on the left is the one that she created after the therapy. And as you can see, the one on the right is a lot more violent, it's a lot more vivid, and the one on the left is significantly more peaceful and simple. So, unfortunately, there are not that many art therapists in the United States. According to the New York Times in 2017, there are only about 5% of therapists are qualified to be art therapists. And so really, I encourage you all to try to get involved in seeking to promote this kind of art therapy and to advocate for those who can't advocate for themselves, because especially with veterans, that's a very large portion of our homeless population, and it's hard for a homeless population and a population that has suffered significant trauma to advocate for themselves. And I hope you all fight for those who need to have peace like me. Thank you.